All right. Whew, it's starting to get to be wintertime. I'm even wearing a jacket inside the studio. That's just because I don't want to go back there and turn the heat on. Anyhow, let's get after it today. Just got back from North Carolina, probably why my core temperature is so cold. And these are some of the first few videos that we're going to start addressing as we move into the holiday season and into January and February, because a lot of our target species are going to be speckled trout for one and redfish for two. If you watch the behind the scenes series that we did with our trip up to Wilmington, North Carolina, fishing with Captain John Owens, I actually alluded to the fact that we were going to do these type of videos moving into the holidays. And one of my favorite, I'm going to say a staple in my tackle box for this time of year is actually the Mirrolure. This is the Mirrodine XL with a 27 MR. It has a rattle in it, has shot in it actually. It's a little bit different sound, more tinny sounding rattle system in it. And it's the perfect size, I'm going to say pinfish, shad-like, herring-like profile that just draws strikes. Now this is one of my favorite colors, which we call bleach blonde in my custom series. If you're out in Texas, you're going to say, well, that's a gringo, because that's the color that you guys associate with it there. Here in Florida, we don't have the, I guess, following that certain baits have in Texas for trout, because trout is like, it's probably the big speckled trout out there this time of year is probably the most heralded species that the guys target. And you see a lot of pictures on social media and YouTube this time of year of guys holding these huge, chunky trout. Their fingers are sinking into them. Many of them are caught on Mirrolures. Now they have a customized version of this same Mirrolure called the Double D, which gives this bait a little bit of a twist. But I'm going to show you as an upper Gulf Coast, Florida and Atlantic Coast angler, how you can accomplish that with a little hack here and a gram scale. So these are the stock hooks that come right out of the box, and it's a number 4 size treble, and it's kind of an HD heavier wire deal. Well, Mirrolure builds these things to catch more than trout, snook, striper, redfish, sometimes even tarpon and cobia and things like that. So they can't put the same hook that they would put on a corky bait, what we call the Paul Brown lure. They can't do that because A, it would change the sink rate of the bait itself, and then you'd have a weaker hook for these other species. Now they've done a good job, Mirrolure, with their accessories, like their single inline setups here. This is the 1/0, but I put 2/0 on the 27 MR because they do a good job of denoting that right on the packaging. And I just didn't go in the shop and go get a 2/0. But when you put the 2/0 hooks on there, still a heavier gauge wire hook to handle big fish, but it actually makes this bait lighter. Now, the 27 MR, the Mirrodine XL, is 3 1/8 inches long, and it weighs 9/16. That's, if I check my notes, that's probably close to 16 grams, or maybe a little over 16 grams. So that's pretty impressive. When you put the single hooks on, though, it weighs closer to 15 grams. You save a little bit, so it gets down to about 1/2 ounce, which slows the sink rate even more. When you're with the factory hooks, this lure falls through the water column at about 6 inches or so per second, maybe a little more. And then you get it down to 1 to 2 feet is where it likes to work the best, and you start darting it and flashing it around. Now you can use this lure all year long. It's a 12-month, bait. You can use it all year long. Probably the first question you're going to ask is, so why would I use single inlines versus treble hooks? There's a need for both, for one, and there's a lot of people that would dispute that, but there's definitely a need for both. I use single inlines when I'm fishing around docks, things where I really need to put some heavy pressure on it. Maybe I've got some debris in the water, some floating grass. Maybe I'm fishing some longer grass. In my body of water here, my home waters, we have a little bit more of this kelpy looking grass. So if I know I'm fishing that kelpy like grass over some rock, I'll definitely use the single inline. If I know I'm only fishing for large fish, I'll definitely fish the single inlines. And for me, the single inlines, honestly, if I'm just going to tell you the straight, dope on this, you've got to work this bait faster with single inlines, because the way these hooks hang down in the water, I'm not saying it really diminishes the action of the bait, but it does take away from the action of the bait. It dampens it a little bit because you've got more of these hooks hanging lower in the water naturally. But for every positive I can find for that, I can find a little bit of a negative. The other negative is when I'm throwing a bait on single inlines, I can't use as parabolic a rod. And a lot of you that are new to fishing might go, so what does that mean? So I might have to use a faster tip, something more in the medium, heavy, fast, to get a good hook set, because the number one thing that you hear from everybody throwing single inline hooks is that they just don't stay on the hook. I lose too many. So the number one thing you hear from every angler is like, man, I've been trying to throw those inline hooks, CA, I cannot keep them on. And that's because they're not throwing a rod heavy enough to drive that bigger hook into them. They're used to throwing this lure on a more medium heavy, moderate fast, a softer rod that bends deeper into the blank, because they're just trying to get those treble hooks in. Now all of a sudden you're throwing that big single in there, and now you're going to need a heavier action rod to be able to drive these hooks home. So that's why when I get into cover, I get into docks and things like that, or just big fish. And again, reminding you, that bait with single hooks works a lot better if you're working it a lot quicker in the warmer months. That's when I use those single inlines. I don't use it the rest of the year that much. I almost always, unless I'm trying to achieve depth, which they've solved that problem with me with the 28 MR, which is the heavier version of this, I almost always switch the hooks to lighter weight hooks. Now I want to tell you about these hooks. What's the difference maker? Now in the past you've seen me use, and one of my good buddies here, who might be one of the best trout personalities on this coast, is Captain Billy Henderson. He'll take those Mustad KVD triple grip hooks, which are a lighter wire, and he'll replace the factory hooks, and he'll put them on this bait to make this bait sink slower or even float in certain salinity waters. I've definitely followed his lead doing that. The only negative to that for me with those Mustad hooks was I was always fighting corrosion with them. They seem like they got pretty nasty pretty quick, and they're not cheap to buy. Not that these are cheap either. I have no affiliation with this at all. But let me tell you the attributes to this one here, the BKK. This is the Spear EWG 71 SS, the Super Slide. It's about $9 for one of these packages. You get 7 in this box. But what's cool about this, and I'll give you the comparison so that you can see them side by side. See how much lighter wire that hook is, and also see how it doesn't hang as low. It's tighter to the body of the bait. Do you see that? Definitely tighter to the body of the bait. So it's a lighter wire hook. It's closer to the body, so it doesn't foul as much. These are EWGs, like I showed you on the package. So I've got more bite between the shank and the tip of the point than I even do with these factory ones. There's more here. And they kind of turn inward. These are super sharp hooks. I mean, they're damn dangerous if you ask me. They have a coating on them that allows smoother, harder hitting penetration. If I get a fish, a trout with a soft mouth, I'm gonna want a lighter wire, smaller diameter hook. And with that coating on there, that super slide effect, I'm going to be able to keep the fish on without him rolling off. You know what a trout does is as soon as he just crushes one of these things, he comes to the top and he starts throwing his head back and forth and back and forth. And usually with the weight of a plug like this, he can throw the plug. But these hooks are game changers. They're super light. Again, they make us a factory weighted 9/16 27 MR. They make it about a half an ounce. So it's a whole full 16th letter. You're like, an ounce, 16th, what's a 16th? A 16th slows this bait down to hardly anything falling beneath the surface. So when you're slow twitching it, it just barely stays below the surface. It's fantastic that way. You can work it in a foot of water so easily. Much like you can the Paul Brown lure, the floater series. It's very good that way. Has just enough action to get their attention, and a big trout is willing to hit a bait like this. I find it's a really strong bait for me moving into January and February here in Florida. You try it anywhere you have zones where you can fish over shallow rock or bars or weedy grass that has a little bit of interspersed mud, and those big trout are sitting there on or between the fronts. I think you're going to find that a really super slow sink bait like this that you can work with just a little bit of action. You don't have to be hyper with it like you would have to with inline hooks, or you don't have to move it as fast because this one's heavier, so you'd have to move it faster. The key is the tempo can be super slow with this, and then you've got a high-end hook that's going to do a good job. You're going to say, so how tough is it on the fish? Well, if you'll mash the barbs down on the front hook, because oftentimes they'll take this bait when it's worked slow head first, you're able to get them out with a pair of hook outs pretty easy because it is a shallow hook. It's easy to get out. If you're fishing tournaments, that would be another reason to use treble hooks. But I find that hook, the way it's weighted, everything about that hook I like. And again, I don't have anything to do with BKK. I think $9 is pretty steep for these, but I will tell you, it has made one hell of a difference in my speckled trout fishing this time of year. The weight's right, the hook quality is superior, and the ability to keep the fish on after the initial strike is like, if they're on, they're on. Now I fish with a lot of light line, or sometimes if I'm fishing casting gear, I just use straight fluorocarbon. But this time of year, a lot of 8 and 10 pound braid, a lot of 15 and 20 pound fluorocarbon leader, because the water where I live is crystal clear. I mean, I don't mind using mono leader for certain things, but fluorocarbon leader is pretty important this time of year. And then, or I just use straight fluorocarbon. I'll use like straight 12 pound fluorocarbon on a casting reel and maybe put a piece of 15, maybe that long at the end, just some tippet. But this has been kind of a game changer, and this color is one of my favorites for clear water, but I find that it works good in almost all water clarities, honestly. And there's going to be some other baits that we talk about, but if I were to give you one great tip, it would definitely be this hack here, where you switch it out to these new Spear, well, they're not really that new, the Spear EWG 71-SS, the super slides. You can pick them up at sodiumusa.com. They're an online tackle affiliate of not only FlatsClass YouTube, but also of our brand new FlatsClass University, which we will be launching in February. So you're going to see a lot of videos on that here on FlatsClass YouTube as we move forward. That's going to be an online fishing school with yours truly and some of my guests. So that will be coming very, very soon. But if you can't find BKK hooks where you are, or even these Mirrolure inline hooks anywhere near your home, maybe you live in God's country, definitely go to sodiumusa.com, order them there, tell them I sent you. I do not have an order code with them for FlatsClass YouTube, but I will have an order code for those of you that are members of FlatsClass University. As always, when I'm here in my studio, my virtual classroom, or on my on-water studio back outside with the Hells Bay Professional or Eldora, I need you to like, comment, share. I want you to be in my classroom every day. We launch either a full-length episode or a short every day on FlatsClass YouTube. And it's my job in the end to make all of you better anglers. Hopefully you'll take this little hack that you can do with the 27 MR Mirrolure, the Mirrodine XL, take it to the water and catch maybe your personal best speckled trout this winter. All right, until next time, appreciate the fact that you guys are sitting here with me. I'm going to break out some more tackle and get to the next, well, lesson, if you will.